The river roared louder than thunder, spilling over its banks and tearing through the quiet valley. Daniel Miller, a barefoot boy of 17, stood frozen on the muddy edge, rain beating down on his thin shoulders. His breath caught when he saw a car half submerged in the torrent, a woman inside pounding against the glass, her eyes wide with panic. In that instant, Daniel did not think about danger or about himself. He only knew someone was about to be swallowed by the flood, and he could not stand still. He had no idea that the life he was about to save belonged to a billionaire who would one day change everything for him. Daniel's life had always been simple. He lived in Maple Creek, a small farming village where houses leaned from years of storms and children grew up learning to carry more than they owned. His shoes were torn, his shirts patched, and most days he rose before the sun to fetch water, feed the goats, or help his mother, Mary, with chores. The world beyond the hills felt distant, unreachable. Like the city lights they sometimes saw flickering on the horizon when the sky was clear. Yet Daniel did not resent his life. He found joy in small things, the sparkle of fireflies at dusk, the croak of frogs after rain, the warm laughter of his younger sister when he told her stories by lamplight. He dreamed quietly, though, of building bridges strong enough to keep villages safe when storms came, of learning more than what life in Maple Creek allowed. That day had begun with a strange heaviness in the air. The clouds hung low, the breeze smelled of wet earth, and the farmers in the fields had glanced nervously at the sky. By afternoon, rain poured down in sheets, fast and hard, turning the dirt paths into rivers of mud. Daniel had gone to gather herbs by the riverbank when he saw the water rising, faster than he'd ever seen before. Within minutes, the calm stream had become a raging monster, tearing at tree roots and carrying branches away like sticks. Then he saw the car. It must have been traveling along the old road that cut near the river, a road no one from the village used during storms. Now the vehicle was stuck, water tugging at its wheels, shoving it closer to the bend, where the current grew merciless. Inside was a woman, her face pale, her hands beating against the window in desperation. Daniel's chest tightened. He thought of his father, who had drowned years before in a flood like this, and he heard his words echo in his mind. When the water speaks in thunder, don't wait to listen twice. Run. But Daniel did not run. He could not. He waded into the current, the cold slamming into him like fists. Each step was a battle, mud sucking at his feet, water shoving him sideways. His heart pounded as he pushed forward, his eyes locked on the terrified woman. She was older than him, maybe in her 30s, dressed in clothes that looked far too fine for Maple Creek, a diamond glinting faintly on her finger even in the storm. "Hold on," he shouted, though the roar of the river swallowed his voice. He picked up a rock and smashed it against the window until the glass cracked, then reached in, his arm scratched and bleeding. She grabbed him instantly, clutching his arm like she was clinging to life itself. "Come!" he gasped, pulling with every ounce of strength. The water surged higher, yanking at both of them. For one terrifying moment, Daniel thought they would be swept away together. But he dug his heels into the mud, leaned back, and with one last desperate heave, pulled her through the broken window. They stumbled and clawed their way back to the bank, collapsing in the mud, coughing and soaked to the bone. For a long time, neither of them moved. Rain hammered the earth, and the river roared past as if furious at their escape. Then the woman turned her head toward him, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw. Daniel nodded, too breathless to speak. He looked at her more closely now. Everything about her seemed out of place here. Her clothes, her shoes, and the faint scent of perfume beneath the mud. She was no traveler from Maple Creek. She was someone from a world Daniel had never touched. Her car, carried off moments later, disappeared downstream like a toy. "Can you walk?" Daniel asked, his voice still shaky. She nodded faintly, and he helped her up. Together, they made their way back through the rain, step by slow step, until they reached his small wooden home at the edge of the village. Mary Miller opened the door wide when she saw them. Without hesitation, she pulled the soaked woman inside, wrapped her in blankets, and set a kettle on the stove. The house smelled of smoke and damp wood. The stranger sat quietly, trembling as she sipped hot tea from a clay cup. "My name is Elizabeth Turner," she said softly after a long silence. Daniel recognized the name faintly. He had seen it once on a newspaper scrap used to wrap vegetables at the market. But he did not know who she really was. He only knew she was alive because he had acted, and that was enough. For 2 days, Elizabeth stayed in their home, waiting for the roads to clear. She watched Daniel carry water, feed the goats, and share stale bread with his sister without complaint. She saw the way he looked out the window at night, as though dreaming of something larger than the small wooden walls around him. They spoke often, sometimes hesitantly, about the world beyond Maple Creek. Daniel admitted, almost shyly, that he wished to study engineering one day, to build strong bridges so floods would no longer steal lives. But he also admitted he had no money for such dreams. Elizabeth listened quietly, her gaze lingering on him. She told them little about herself, keeping her truth hidden. For Elizabeth Turner was no ordinary woman. She was a billionaire, owner of Turner Industries, with her name etched on skyscrapers and airports. She had come alone to the countryside, seeking quiet from her relentless world, never imagining she would nearly lose her life in a flood, or that it would be saved by a poor village boy, with nothing but courage. On the third morning, the rain had stopped. A sleek black car waited at the edge of the village. Elizabeth stood before it, her clothes cleaned, her strength returned. Daniel walked beside her, bare feet sinking in the soft earth. His chest felt heavy, as though he were saying goodbye to something precious he could not name. She paused before stepping into the car and turned to him. "Daniel," she said gently, "do you know who I am?" He blinked. "Elizabeth Turner," he replied. "You told us." She smiled faintly. "Yes, but I am also someone with resources. Someone who can help." She reached into her bag and handed him a card, its surface simple, a number printed in bold. "If you ever want to study, if you ever want to build those bridges you spoke of, call this. Don't doubt yourself. Just call." Daniel stared at the card, his hand trembling. Before he could respond, Elizabeth stepped into the car. The door closed, and the vehicle rolled away, leaving him standing in the quiet morning, the card clutched against his chest like a secret treasure. Months passed. Daniel worked as he always had, yet the thought of the card never left him. At night, by the dim glow of a lantern, he would take it from his pocket and stare at it, wondering if it was real, wondering if a woman like her would truly remember a boy like him. Finally, with his mother's encouragement, he borrowed a neighbor's phone and dialed the number. A calm voice answered. Turner Industries' private office. That call was the beginning of a journey Daniel could never have imagined. Elizabeth kept her promise. She arranged for his education, a scholarship in his name. He traveled to the city, where skyscrapers gleamed and trains roared, and studied engineering. For the first time in his life, he held books of his own, walked across bridges built by men who once dreamed as he did, and began to believe he could change more than just his own fate. Through letters, he kept in touch with Elizabeth. Their bond grew into something more than gratitude. She was not just a benefactor, but a mentor, a guide, and a friend. She reminded him again and again that his courage mattered, that his dreams had value. Years later, Daniel returned to Maple Creek, not as the poor barefoot boy who had once stood on the muddy riverbank, but as a young man with knowledge, plans, and determination. He designed and built a bridge across the river, strong and high, so no storm could trap travelers again. At the opening ceremony, the villagers gathered in celebration, their cheers echoing across the valley. Elizabeth was there too, standing quietly among them, her eyes shining with pride. When Daniel spoke, his voice steady, he did not call her billionaire or rescuer. He said only, "This bridge exists because someone believed in a boy who had nothing but hope." The crowd applauded. The river ran calmly beneath the new structure, and Elizabeth felt her heart swell, not with the pride of wealth, but with the joy of seeing courage bloom into something lasting. Life often hides its greatest gifts in the most unlikely places. A poor village boy may hold the strength to save a life. A woman of great fortune may hide a heart longing to be touched by honesty and kindness. And sometimes, in a single act of bravery, two worlds collide, forever changing both. So when life places someone before you in need, do not hesitate. Step forward. You never know how far the ripples of your courage may reach, across rivers, across lives, across time.